Alrighty, so we are on step 2 of our decision app, and as I roll through the weeks and I come to where we finished up, and I'm just going to give you the overview and then we'll jump in and actually look at some of the detail. But in this case, after we finished, after you submitted your step 1, then we implemented storage, we implemented the table and the clear all from local storage. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to now implement into your, or you're going to implement, and I did as well, into your step 1. Now, for some of you, and I had said this, and as far as I can remember right now, I think most people already did this. You need to, A, have working code coming into step 2, which is here, right? So in this case, step 2 is going to be due on the attendance, but I will tell you, I've been giving a little more time, so as long as it's there a day or two, not much further past that, because I understand these decision steps do take a bit of time. But I did it go ahead and reorient the week based on what I saw in weeks in that step that we did with step 1. Okay, so now let's actually go in and look at what you're going to need to do. And so here is I thought I had it up, but here it is. Here's your step 2. Okay, so in your step 2, you're going to add persistence, save and load current decision in that table format. So now, before you start, make sure you've made any adjustments to your README file, right? Because that was based on week 6 attendance where I had you go through and update that, right? To include the required output that was talked about. That'll be one of the things I look at in this one. So before you start, because you'll end up copying all your files, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, for some of you, and this is what I was talking about before, your decision output needs to show up on the page, because I did give you the option to just output the object last time. So you do need to have it on the page, and it does need to be a decision. And I talked about this in week 6, is having a score is a good start, but you actually need a decision here. Okay, so if, based on week 6 attendance, you want to modify in place your step 1 before you start on your step 2. Okay, so make sure all that's in place. So make sure you have working code. Okay, so in this case, if you're modifying, I didn't give you a message here, but you can modify in place before you do this step, which is just to put, your commit message is modify it, readying for step 2. Okay, so you have to have working code, you have to have your decision output on the page, you actually have to have a decision versus a score. And you do have to have all those inputs and associated calculations in the object as well. Okay, so then you copy over. And so in this case, I'm going to show you the setup in VS Code. Okay, now I happen to have open just my private repo. Here's my app. Here's my step 2. So in that case, if you needed to make those modifications, make them before you come over here. And in this case, once you have that over, then just do a commit here. Okay, so again, if you didn't need to do any of this above stuff, then you would just have one commit. Otherwise, you would have two. Right, so here's the goals for this step, is to load and display your last saved decision, which we already really have here. Okay, and then we'll save the most recently submitted decision to local storage after the form is submitted. Dynamically display the submitted decision in your area, right? So I'll show you mine in a minute. Handle the UI resets and clear all data functionality. Okay, and then customize your table with your color palette and continued use of the modular JavaScript structure. Okay, so in this case, what I laid this out in the way I approached it, and I think this should work. It seemed to work for me. I definitely had to modify a bit of code, but some of it was just like I brought over some things and I could just easily modify them. The thing that needed the most modification for this week is that table render, right? Because you have specific data that you have captured through your form that you'll need to update that. But let's go through this in order. So you're going to implement local storage into your app. Now, in this case, I'm going to have you name that file something different, right? So in this case, it'll be called data store. And this is, we're going to keep the table render file name and import, but on the data store, I will have you change that name of the file and of the associated import to data store. Okay, I do this honestly because when we're doing these steps, part of what we're going through is just what we've already done to make sure we remember how things work and they fit together. Okay, so now once you implement this, and you can go back and look, so you can tell based on the way I started this, right, is that we ended. So here's your data implement storage module here. Okay, so you can kind of take these in this case, right? But in this case, I'm showing you how I want you to move through it. Okay, so make sure, so fix any errors, right? So you have to bring that data in, that module in that we've already coded, but you have to modify it for your data specific application naming. Okay, you can't just keep the old names. So you have to come up with those. Make sure your data is saved and retrieved. Okay, and then implement the unique ID. This is important. That data store needs a unique ID for stuff that we're going to do later. And then there's your commit. Now you could have multiple commits here. Maybe you started it and completed it. But I decided after last time, because seeing the commits, I actually want to give you specific commits, but if you needed additional ones, that's fine. Okay, so, and then you'll implement the table render into your app with all the associated UI functionality. You can keep the name table renderer as the imported name and table render.js as the file name. Okay. Now, I did specifically lay out these things because in this case, again, most of this was just bringing over, but also reviewing what its functionality was giving us, right? What was that doing? Why were we doing that? Right, so you'll just, and these are just like, make sure you have this in there, and then you'll update your init function to add clear all data, event listener, and associated logic, and then the document listeners for if the user clicks outside of the table. Okay, so then you have a commit message here. Now this is the one, again, step through carefully. This is where using your dev tools to show you where things are broken really does help you. Okay. So then you update your data renderer.js to handle your app specific data, right? So in other words, you first kind of get the app. Most of this is in the app.js, okay? Actually, all of it is. And then you move over working on, okay, this, yeah, I put app.js here. So, and then you update the table renderer to handle your application specific data, okay? Now, in this case, I'm going to have you output all the keys and values from your submission for now. Okay, I actually need to change that, fix that wording. And I'll show you what I mean by this in a minute. We will customize at the start of the next step. There's a lot of things that we did on the carbon footprint that were little helper functions to make that more interesting as far as the table went. So this time I just want you to put out everything, and then we'll come back on step 3 and look at it. Okay. Oh, this needs to be bolded as well. And then the last thing I'll have you do here is update all comments to be for your specific, your app specific content. Okay. So make sure none of that, when I look through here, I'll probably do a search through the files to make sure there's no carbon footprint stuff. Okay, let's go look at my output. One thing you can see, I have a data store, I have the table renderer, so I have my new data store. If I just put in, and I actually ended up modifying my template, my color template, because I didn't like it. I'm going to do 87. I'm going to do it's a Saturday, it's nice outside, which workout, cool. So it lists, this is again where if you didn't have this coming in, you'll need to have had this outputted with your different parts of your decision, but an actual decision that comes out. So now is where we get into the new functionality. We have the table, so you can see what I did here is I left the date the way it is. I did the energy store, the energy workout. So in other words, based on my energy, I had a specific workout that was recommended. Based on the day, I had a specific workout that was recommended. Okay, based on, let me just get over here, based on the outside temperature, right? The specific, in this case, temperature, what workout was going to be inside or out. And this is where I thought, you know what, for now, let's just output that entire object. And then the output the workout suggestion. Okay, so and I want you to do this to kind of think about how would you want to. Now these edit and deletes we'll handle later. Okay, but so whatever that object was, so I could come into my table renderer, right? And hold on a second. So I just brought this up to show you is in my table renderer, then I stopped here and then just by inputting, let's just run it with a standard inputs here and let it run through. As soon as I got here, then I could come down and look at my entry, right? So whatever my entry was for, and that would tell me, okay, and this is the part I want to explain what I was talking about. So here's all my data that I've captured. The only thing you don't have to, actually we end up day and time, we use that as well. You don't have to output the ID, that's that unique ID. You'll have to handle that in the storage. But the rest of this data was outputted to the table, okay? So where I had day of the week, and then that day was bike ride, energy, score was 87, so that type of workout. So again, this is where I definitely saw I could have done a better job of naming these things, but as long as you can match them up for now, it'll be fine. Okay, so more than anything, I just want to show you, and let me just let this run. Right, so now I have 2 entries in here. So again, just output everything for now. Think about how you'll do it, because probably in step 3, I'll start. Matter of fact, we may do an attendance. I can see that coming possibly for the before maybe week 8, to where we actually go in and think about how we want this to output. Okay, but for now, I just make sure your clear data works, right? So if I click off, it doesn't, right? So and also if I wait and I don't, it waits a certain amount of time, then it goes back. Oh, I already see where I need to change some of my CSS, which by the way, this is also where in this step I talked about, you'll want to customize. Let me make sure I put this in here. Yeah. Customize your table. So all of your table functionality for your app specific. And I just noticed in doing that I had one of mine, so I could come in here and I could hit insert, inspect, and then I could go find that specific item in my, oh yeah, danger button hover over. Okay, so I could find that specific one to then make the changes to the CSS. Okay, but I also want to make sure, of course, when I clear, that actually does clear the local storage. Okay, so hopefully this gives you the idea. I will fix the wording here, and I will bold these 2 as well. So how do I grade this, right? Oh, by the way, the last thing I did was I actually ended up, this is actually a good use of Gen AIs to help me organize comments organized and app-specific data to make sure none of that carbon footprint, because I noticed for a lot of you, you still had some of that carbon footprint in your comments. So you want to clean that up this time. So give me your commit history for week 10. Those will be the commits. Again, if you have extra ones, those are okay, but at least you need to have these in there. Required commits present aligns with the functionality and comments updated in your code specific functionality. In other words, do your commits align with the work that you're doing. Local storage module, this is again where you have to give it a new name, implemented with the unique ID and saves all inputs and decision data. Table render displays all object data, and clear functionality and UI states are functional. Okay, 100 points here. Code with errors will not be graded, but please reach out for help. So this is one of the things, because you'll have a little more time here to do this. Again, probably another 24 hours, possibly a little more, but in this case, the sooner you get it done, the sooner you can get help. This is one of those things you don't want to work or you don't want to wait on, because getting help could be definitely important here. Okay, so now that I've done this, I'm now going to think about what we're going to do for this week's attendance, because it'll be something around this. All right, reach out for help. I hope this is clear. If not, please ask me.